Hi there, and welcome to Studio SN, your place for card making, rubber stamping, and paper crafting tutorials. My name is Sara Naumann, and I'm so very glad you're here. Today I want to show you how to get a fun and easy textured and colored background for your cards. You'll notice I've got a really fun dot pattern on here that has been created with Grunge Paste, and then I've added some color on here with Infusions. Both of these products are from PaperArtsy, and they're a great combination for making a quick and easy background. So I'm going to begin first of all with a piece of smooth white cardstock. Now for this, you do want to have a fairly heavyweight cardstock. This is about a 300 GSM. You don't want something too lightweight because of course we're going to be adding some texture medium on here and also some water. So you want to have something that can stand up to that. Now to get my dot pattern, I'm going to put down a stencil on here. Now as you can see, the stencil has been well used. This is my PS145 stencil, also from PaperArtsy. And it does look like it could use a good scrub, but it will work just fine for right now. I'm going to secure this down with some masking tape just to hold things down on either side. And then I'm going to bring in my Grunge Paste. Now Grunge Paste is a texture medium, and as you can see it comes in a really nice neutral color. So it's not bright white, but it is kind of an off-white or a bone color. And that means that you can tint it with other colors, but it also means that it works really nicely on white cardstock to give an almost white on white effect. Now I'm going to use a palette knife to just scoop some of this texture medium out and apply it onto my cardstock going through the stencil. So you can see the kind of consistency of this. It's not really drippy or runny. It does have a nice body to it. And I'm just going to spread this right on top. Use my palette knife to work this into all of those circles. And then I can come back and add some more here and just cover this entire area with my Grunge Paste. And it's going to depend on how large you want your background to be. So maybe you just want a small area, or maybe you just want to do partial stenciling on this. As I'm putting the Grunge Paste on, I don't have to worry about being too stingy with it because I'm going to scrape off the excess and return it to the jar. So I can put as much on here as I want. Now I've found also when I use my palette knife to scrape this even, it doesn't work quite as well as it does if I use an old hotel key card. So this is my trick for getting a nice smooth scrape. So I'm able to remove the excess of that Grunge Paste, but I'm not sort of getting in any of those areas here. I'm getting a nice smooth effect. And then I can simply take the excess from my hotel key card and just scrape it back onto the side of the jar. Now Grunge Paste does dry really quickly, which means that you want to make sure the lid is put back on tightly and pretty quickly after you're done with your stenciling. I'm going to pull this off, remove the tape. I'm going to want to clean my stencil and my palette knife pretty quickly after I do this as well. So I'll pull that off and then lift the stencil straight up. And you can see I've got a really cool textured background. Now the trick with this is going to be to let this dry, and again it won't take very long to dry, but you do want to make sure it's thoroughly dry before you move on to the next step, which is going to be adding our infusions. The next part of the process is going to be adding some color onto my textured background with some infusions, and the color I'm using is a bit jaded, which is going to give me this beautiful jade green color here you see on the label. So what I'm going to do is take off this piece of washi tape that I have on the top of my lid, and you can see that that's just covering a really tiny hole here. When I dispense my infusions onto my background piece, I'm just going to tap out a little bit because this is very, very concentrated color. So you don't need to undo the lid and dump it out straight onto your background piece because you will have way, way, way too much color. It's a really, really concentrated color. So I've got some sprinkling on here. Now the next thing I need to do is just mist with water. So I'm going to simply mist once, twice, and you can start to see that color reacting. So infusions are a color stain. They have not only that beautiful color that you see on here, in this case, again, it's a bit jaded, it also has some walnut crystals in here, and that's going to give a really pretty vintage effect. Now, all of the crystals are going to sort of react to the water in different amounts of time, so you can kind of play with how much water you're adding onto your background piece to see what look you're getting. Now, I've got quite a bit of water on here, and now I can start to sort of move my piece, and that liquid infusions is going to go around and on top of, in some cases, my grunge paste background. And I knew that I wanted to have the color sort of going in the center of my piece rather than covering the entire piece itself, but you can choose whichever way you want it to go. So you can see there's a lot more brown over here, it's a lot more green over in this area. Of course, the more water I use, the more diluted that color will be. But just take a look at how pretty that is. Now, I can let this air dry, and that's what I did with my original project, or I can come in with just a piece of tissue or an old towel and blot this. And then you'll see that I've got a really soft and pretty effect. I'm still getting the look of some of those granules of color powder. I think this is just such a pretty and easy background to do. So I'm going to bring back in my original card so that you can see the two side by side. Of course, you're going to get a completely different look every time. And you can also, of course, mix and match other colors. So if you wanted to use another color of infusions on there as well, you can definitely do that too. So the next part of the process here with the card is going to be to let this dry and set it aside for the background. And then I want to show you how to create the infusions backgrounds onto white cardstock to create the background for the stamping of the fern as well as the sentiment on here. I wanted to create some coordinating backgrounds for my stamped pieces here. So again, I'm going to be working with a piece of smooth white cardstock and also my a bit jaded infusions. Now with this one, we're going to simply mist the cardstock pretty heavily with water before adding the infusion. So I've got a lot of water on here, and I'm going to simply tap on the infusions in the same way I did before. Again, keep it pretty sparing. You don't need to have a whole lot, and you can see how that color is immediately beginning to react to the water on there. Now you can also add just a bit more if you want to. And what I'm going to do is just pause for a moment and let that water react with the infusions and really let those crystals start to dissolve before I bring in my next tool, which is my PaperArtsy brayer. So in this case, what I'm going to do is simply brayer some of that excess water around just to blend things out a little bit and just to soften some of those granules that haven't completely melted yet. And then what I'm going to do is bring in a tissue, which you can see I've used before, and blot this. And then lift off some of that excess water. And I have a very pale and beautiful effect, one that will work really nicely for stamping. So the stamps that I'm working with are from PaperArtsy as well. This is the Eclectica ESN37 stamp set. And for this card, I used the fern here as well as the sentiment going across here. And these are from the July 2019 release of Eclectica stamps. So what I've done here, I'll bring in the original card and you can see I've simply stamped and die cut this into an oval, mounted it up onto some foam tape, added some twine on here, and then I have the sentiment going across here in black. And I've just simply stamped them with the VersaFine black ink pad on here, and it coordinates all really nicely. So this is how you can create some fun backgrounds with your grunge paste and with your infusions from PaperArtsy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you so much for joining me on Studio SN. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with the very latest stamping and card making videos. In the meantime, please feel free to stop by my website, saranaumann.com, for more paper crafting ideas. Thanks again, and I will see you next week.